there's two main ones really. One is that you're bypassing the soil, so you're not benefiting the soil, and the other one is that you're mining the soil, which are probably the two main ones. But the thing with, I guess I'll touch on the bypassing the soil thing. If we're only feeding the plant, are we bypassing the soil? And the answer is no, because when we're talking foliar urea, we are applying it to the plant. But like I said before, there's still 16 other nutrients that the plant needs to uptake. Nitrogen's not the only thing that makes a plant grow, and what we're doing is actually we're removing one of the most energy-intensive processes from the soil and from the microbes, what they have to do, and supplementing it into the plant itself, which when you're applying granular, you're almost flooding the system with readily available synthetic N, which reduces the incentive for the microbes and the biology to do that work.
This podcast is brought to you by GroundShift. If you're anything like me, you've probably realised that doing things the way they've always been done doesn't always lead to better outcomes on the farm. And that's where GroundShift comes in. GroundShift is all about helping farmers rethink the way that they approach their soils, the inputs into their system, and improving their overall farm system performance. We focus on building resilience, improving efficiency, and ultimately creating more profitable farm systems. It's not always about throwing more into your system. Sometimes it's about understanding what's driving those results beneath the surface. So if you're serious about improving your farm's profitability and resilience, and utilising biology to drive your farm system performance, I highly recommend checking out groundshift.ag, and you can follow them online at groundshift.ag on Instagram. Welcome to another episode of the From the Soil Up podcast. Today's special guest is Joel Crump from Tow Fert here in New Zealand. Tow Fert, if you're not familiar with them, are they're very versatile foliar fertiliser machines that help reduce fertiliser costs through improved fertiliser efficiency. And today's chat is something I've wanted to do for a while because I feel like there's a lot of myths in New Zealand around foliar fertiliser and how to best get the use out of Tow Fert. So without further ado, let's get into it. Joel, how are you today?
Yeah, good, man. Excited to be here. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, so it's good to be on the other side.
Oh, it's great to have you here. I've been following along Tow Fert, and we've been, chatting through social media for some time now. So, yeah, it's fantastic to have you on, and hopefully today we're going to have a really good chat around how to use Tow Fert and the growth of the company as well, because we are seeing it go from strength to strength, not only in New Zealand but around the world.
Yeah, definitely. Seemed to bump into you at all the different community events we end up at. So, yeah. So there's a bit of crossover of audience there. So hopefully people get some value out of this. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm sure they will. So Joel, how does foliar feeding influence soil biology compared to granular fertiliser?
Straight into the meat and veg, eh? Yeah. Okay. It's kind of long, but I guess in simplest terms, I'll just start off actually. Here at Tow Fert, we're not agronomists. We build a tool, and it's through 15 years of R&D that we've learnt all these methods and I guess styles of farming. But when it comes back to the foliar versus granular example, when you're putting on prills, say urea prills, a synthetic form of nitrogen, we're relying on basically a large chain of events before that nutrient makes its way into the plant. So you've got it going through the ammonia, ammonium, nitrate, then the plant takes it up and converts it back to ammonium and then uses it for plant growth. And each one of those stages comes with losses or the potential for losses, and it comes at a cost of energy from the soil, energy from the plant, and the biology that make it all happen, consume carbon, oxygen, things like that in the soil to, deliver that demand to the plant. And that's only one nutrient, right? There's 16 other essential nutrients that plant needs to grow. So when it comes to foliar, we're just dissolving that same product, urea, in water and delivering it straight to the leaf, where it's taken in through little pores or cuticle or stomata on the leaf surface. And then inside the plant, it's rapidly assimilated. And from there, once it's inside the plant, it takes the exact same route for plant growth as where the ammonium in the plant gets taken up in the granular form. So it's the same product, and at the end, it's the same process, but the path to get there is a lot shorter, a lot more rapid.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. So essentially, we are almost shortcutting using a foliar feed rather than going to the granular because we don't have that extra conversion process.
Yeah, that's it. So each one of those stages, first of all, you've got to have the right conditions. You've got to have some soil moisture there so that the urease enzymes can turn that urea prill into ammonia, and then it's quickly turned into ammonium, and then you've got your nitrogen fixing or oxidizing bacteria that take it to nitrite and nitrate, and then it's the nitrate that the plant uptakes. And each one of those steps is, you've got biology doing that stage for you, which is what a lot of people don't really think of, the energy cost in putting on the granular urea and what it's actually taking for that to get into the plant. And it's kind of why we see a lot of, I guess, degradation of soils or acidification of soils, and why we have to put on a lot of lime and soil structure changes, because it's, you've got biology in there using up carbon and using up calcium to make that process happen.
That's a really important point there. It's kind of, we forget about all the other bits of energy that are contributing when we're using nitrogen, particularly in the granular form, and that's an additional cost. And I think about it as like the longer term profitability of our system. So we might be profitable this year, but we might be stealing from the future version of our farm where we're going to have to use more to create the same. So it's great that you've brought that up. So Joel, can you give us a bit of an background on yourself and how you got to working with Tow Fert?
Yeah, right. So I've been working with Tow Fert for a while now from a more of a marketing and product point of view. I'm not a farmer by any means. So I had a marketing company in Tauranga, and Metalform has actually been a really good client of mine for about 7 years before I came in-house. We saw the culture here and the team and the products that we work on here, and kind of fell in love with the agriculture industry and the Tow Fert system itself and working with farmers. So that shift over to the product side of things was, I guess, really insightful. I had to relearn everything, basically ask all the dumb questions, pester a bunch of farmers. Every time I was on farm, I was just trying to learn and see what they're doing. And coming at it from a non-farming background, I hadn't had a lot of assumptions, or I didn't know that this is how Fert was done because that's how my granddad did it or dad did it. So when I've been on farm with farmers, hearing about what they're doing, and when I hear the success stories and what they're trying and what's working and what's not, it really makes sense to me. Hearing people like Russ Heald, like where we met the other day, just explaining his story and the cause and effect he sees on farm, it kind of made me wonder why we've got this long without trying some of these things. But on the other side, I could really see it too. Like, it's a lot to gamble on when it's the family farm, and it's easy to do what you know. There was a bit of a tangent off my background, but I guess that's where I come from. As my motivations or my interest in it is, I get really excited seeing what farmers get up to and what they try with the machines, because we don't really we use them. We've got a few around the factory and we use them locally, but just seeing what all sorts of it's such a versatile machine. Seeing what people come up with, whether it's like mixing milk powder and spraying out seeds and all sorts of things, it's quite cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those toys that people might get for, lowering their nitrogen use at the start, but then it opens up this world of possibility of all these other things you can chuck in it, because it is so versatile. I think some farmers probably get a bit carried away with what they can put into it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a long list of products that people have had a hard time with and probably regretted putting in it. But yeah, that's kind of built a great app over the last 15 years. We've got a big list of products listed in our Mix app that we know kind of the limits of each product and what we can suspend and the points you can take it to without blocking and whatnot. Yeah, originally, so I guess going back to that origin story, is Metalform, the company, as a manufacturer, we started in 1961. So we're pretty old now as far as a New Zealand manufacturing company goes. We've got a lot of engineering under our belt, and we've been in the fertilizer game for quite a while. So making the gate boxes on like top dressing planes, like the like Super Air, things like that. They use a bunch of our parts, and helicopter buckets for just granular like fertilizer application, aerial application. And then the Tow Fert really came about by, we were making a fertilizer bucket for fine particle application and foliar application. Obviously, fuel and running helicopters is not a cheap exercise, so they needed to get the most efficiency they could out of the inputs they were putting on high country farms. And when the guys saw them getting great success with fine particles and foliar applications from the air, they thought, why not make this more accessible to everyday farmers that can tow something around that would do the same thing. And that's kind of where the Tow Fert itself was born, and that idea.
So was that the problem that was originally they were trying to solve when they first created the Tow Fert?
Yeah. So one of the problems, I guess, is the efficiency was proven. So you got high value crops and vegetables using foliar for decades, but in a pastoral context, it hasn't been the most affordable, and it's quite logistically challenging. So you can just buy liquid urea and put that through a boom sprayer, but the logistics in freighting liquid around the country is quite high. So the dollar per hectare rate ends up being quite high, almost to the point where might not be worth doing for some farmers. Whereas if you can take water and take the same cheap standard uncoated urea, dissolve that in a tank in the sprayer, so you don't have to have a separate mixing tank and whatnot, and have the sprayer mix that and apply it straight through the sprayer, you're getting that saving. You're getting the saving of using the cheap fert. The same product is easily accessible everywhere, but you're applying it in a more efficient manner and less of it for, similar dry matter response. So that's kind of where the main value prop started for the Tow Fert. And obviously it's just ballooned into this machine that can do it all. But part of the capabilities of the machine is being able to dissolve that urea through the stainless steel trash pump that we make. But all the little things in the machine that makes that possible have just, over time, we've learnt have made all these other inputs possible, and it's really come together as a whole, a really versatile machine for a lot of different operations.
How would you describe the Tow Fert itself to someone who's never seen one? I feel like everyone kind of knows what they are, but that might not be true.
Yeah, we still get people at field days and things like that coming up saying, well, what is this? So I'll do my best to explain that. So if you think of a typical sprayer, you've got normally a diaphragm pump and a boom with 40, 50, 60 nozzles along it, or every 300 mil, 500 mil. And they're quite small hoses, small nozzles, and they're built for refined liquids. Obviously, that doesn't work when you start chucking in granular fertilizer products. So the Tow Fert is it is a sprayer, but we've got a few key points on it that make it different to most or every other sprayer. One is really strong onboard agitation. So from the tank, the liquid and slurry or fert is running directly into a pump, and it's not filtered before the pump. The pump is a 3-inch stainless steel trash pump that we make here in Dannevirke, and it's made to basically take anything. It'll take the odd stone and bolt from the bottom of a fert bag and things like that, and fire that straight back into the tank. And on a lot of our smaller models, that return to the tank is the agitation, and then on the bigger models, the agitation is done with a big stainless steel propeller, and that's just to keep things suspended in the liquid so they don't sit down at the bottom of the tank. That's what allows us to do seeds and lime flour and humates and a lot of things that would normally settle out. And then where it gets a bit different again to a normal sprayer is from the tank, instead of going to one boom line that has many nozzles, we just go to 2 booms, and the booms have a feed and a return. So about maybe 80% of the liquid that's going through the boom actually returns to the tank, and only 10% to 20% is coming out the nozzles at the end. So there's no point in the sprayer where there's liquids that's sitting still. It's always moving. Everything is designed to go down and into the flow back to the tank, so you're not getting any blockages.
That's pretty interesting. So that is just keeping everything moving, is to try and avoid anything blocking or settling in the lines. Yeah,
and it keeps because we can handle such like complex mixes. It keeps everything even as well. You don't get the pump taking a mouthful of whatever the heaviest product is and spitting that out first, and then you're just left with the liquid of whatever you're trying to apply last. So it keeps your product delivery really even. It minimises blocking of nozzles and things like that as well, because we've got like a typical pump and sprayer setup people are used to maybe upwards of 100 psi operating, and we're actually around 20 psi, so it's really low pressure, safe for biology and microbes and things like that, which typically start to get harmed above the 40 psi mark. So we're actually a high flow but low pressure system, really big pipes. Everything's moving freely without restriction, and then that allows us to carry all sorts of things like the seeds and fine particle products and things like that.
That's awesome.
And we've only got 2 nozzles, so one nozzle at the end of both booms, that'll do about 20 metres. So out of each nozzle, you're actually getting quite a wide spray.
And you're getting quite even results then, because everything's obviously recycling the whole time? So when you actually are applying, would you say it's a better even spread than your usual, like granular?
Yeah, I guess what you're doing is you're taking a lot of products that have different specific gravities or different consistencies, and you're suspending them in a unified liquid. Whereas if you had a handful of urea prills and then you picked up and then you put the same handful into a bucket of biochar, which is really light, and then some lime flour, and you threw it, urea prills are going to go quite far. The lime flour might not go very far because it's like a talcum powder, right? And being able to put that all in liquid means when you do cast it out, it just goes as far as the water goes, so it's really even.
That's a really good point. What are some of the biggest misconceptions you come across with farmers when it comes to foliar feeding? Yeah,
there's a few really. Misconceptions, they can be pretty varied. Like, it depends where the farmers come from. Often it's not their own misconceptions. It's just something they've heard, or they might be getting advice from someone that's told them a certain fact or misconception. The biggest one is probably that it's somehow bypassing or ignoring the soil. So there's two main ones really. One is that you're bypassing the soil, so you're not benefiting the soil, and the other one is that you're mining the soil, which are probably the two main ones. But the thing with, I guess I'll touch on the bypassing the soil thing. If we're only feeding the plant, are we bypassing the soil? And the answer is no, because when we're talking foliar urea, we are applying it to the plant. But like I said before, there's still 16 other nutrients that the plant needs to uptake. Nitrogen's not the only thing that makes a plant grow, and what we're doing is actually we're removing one of the most energy intensive processes from the soil and from the microbes, what they have to do, and supplementing it into the plant itself, which essentially when you do that when you're applying granular, you're almost flooding the system with readily available synthetic N, which reduces the incentive for the microbes in the biology to do that work, and they can become dormant, and then they stop mobilizing other nutrients in the soil. And that's why you often see under heavy granular urea use, you see it's hard to keep your clover content up, right? I don't know if you've noticed that on farm, Conan, but one of the things people often find when they switch to a foliar program is that their clover comes back, and it's simply because while we are just feeding the plant, and there's probably an aspect of it that the liquid does make it into the soil. Anything that runs off or hits the soil, we're not really shock loading it. So we're just we're basically giving the soil more energy to get the rest of the nutrients it needs, all the trace elements and things like that, and not really locking up or not taking the energy from the microbes for that plant to grow.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that clover does tend to come back. And I think it is a really good point around you're not shortcutting the biology part of the soil. You're allowing them to do the work that they do, and do that nutrient cycling and access that pantry of full nutrients that otherwise, if you're just dumping on a whole heap of granular, they kind of just not needed, so they go to sleep, like you say. And then when you pull that out and do it suddenly, you have that big shock because they don't just automatically switch back on. You need to wean it back in. So that's been the real interesting observation. But I do think some of it does hit the soil still, and that might be because it's lower amounts. It's probably enough to kind of kickstart things and help that cycling as well. So that's a very good point to make. And
that, I guess the other point on that side is the plant still has to send out root exudates and things like that to the microbes to get them functioning. So you're still supporting the rhizosphere as such, if not even more, because the plant interacts more with the biology because it needs more. It's not readily available, so it has to use the microbes and things like that to mobilize everything.
Mm-hmm. You're doing well for someone who's not an agronomist. You're talking like one. You're probably talking a bit more in depth than some that I've met. So it's bloody good. I probably learnt it from mostly you guys, to be honest. I think Tow Fert are definitely leaders in this, and particularly in the foliar space. And like you say, with a lot of farmers trialling different things, it has probably helped prove what we can put through in a foliar form and at what rates and what rate works, which is fantastic. I guess like the common reason why people go to foliar or Tow Fert is they want to use less fertilizer, but they're trying to maintain the same results, or is there opportunity to actually get better results from that foliar if you're using less?
Yeah, for sure. It does really depend on, I guess, on people's goals, where they want to take it. But often the nitrogen story and just reducing your nitrogen, saving 30 to 50% on your nitrogen costs is a really compelling reason to get into it. But a lot of the benefits, you don't have to cut it that much, and you can push the system more. You could reduce a lot and get the same yield, so you're spending less and getting the same yield. Or you can maybe not reduce it as much and look at your system, do a lot of testing and work with agronomists and increase your dry matter production and hopefully yield as well, or milk solids, whatever you're chasing. But the nitrogen story normally is what grabs people, and it's almost a gateway drug. Like we see a lot of farmers will come, they'll say, sweet, I just want to switch to foliar. They'll try to do exactly what they're doing in granular form, but as a foliar spray, pretty much your typical urea, your SOA, things like that. And then when they see that working, they think, okay, well, there's truth to that. Then what else is true? So they will start trying different things, like adding your humic and fulvic acids and starting to do a bit more biology support, looking at your fish hydrolysate and things like that. Yeah, some people that one field days might come and they'll say, yeah, I'm just going to use it for urea. And then you see them in 12 months and suddenly they're brewing their own compost teas and they've gone right down the rabbit hole. But it's you can take it as far as you want, really.
Yeah, I think it kind of brings that little bit of fun back to the farming. You get to experiment with a whole lot of things that you can make yourself. And I mean, that inherently will drive lower costs if you can keep that energy within your system. Are you seeing at the moment, with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and everyone really kind of freaking out about nitrogen prices, they're looking like 40 or 50% up probably for next season? Are people interested in foliar and Tow Fert now?
Yeah, definitely. So similar to what happened over the COVID period, really, when urea prices went up, our production is just having to keep up. We're already pushing out to June, July for machine deliveries on farm, and I can only see that growing. So a lot of people are like, it's one of the biggest costs on farm now, right? Like your urea bills is really getting up there. So even 30% off that as a savings is massive, and it doesn't take long for that one bit of machinery to become pretty cash flow positive. So we've seen a massive increase this year, and it definitely picks up as fertilizer prices picks up. But to be honest, the efficiency gain, no matter where the fertilizer price is, it's a really compelling efficiency gain. It's just, it becomes a lot more apparent and seems a lot more urgent when it is expensive.
Yeah, nothing like a crisis to drive people to change, is it? It's when everything's going good, and I mean, nitrogen's not too expensive. People don't seem to be too worried. But even just the usual price of nitrogen compared to what it was maybe 10, 15 years ago is a hell of a lot more expensive. And because we do have a lot more options around things like Tow Fert and biologicals to help increase that efficiency, I feel like there is general interest in what is out there, because there is a building number of biological farmers across the land, or across the world, actually. Yeah.
And then I guess in conjunction with that is we're seeing a lot from the likes of catchment groups and I guess areas that are really trying to clean up waterways and reduce synthetic inputs. Even some of them are being funded. So like they often qualify for the bank green loans and things like that, lower interest rates to buy machinery if they have environmental impacts that are positive. So we do see them all around the world: Ireland, UK, Scotland, Wales, Norway, Uruguay. I know you've been over there. Yeah, Chile, America, Australia. So that they definitely get around, but quite a few of those places subsidise the purchase of them. Even like in the UK, they've got their areas of outstanding natural beauty where farmers are getting subsidised for looking at the ways they use their fertiliser. And similar over here, it's not subsidised, but you can get some pretty good green loans, we call them, from the bank.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good to know for me. I didn't know you could get them under a green loan, so that might help a few conversations.
Yeah.
I guess we've talked a lot about the positives of foliar Fert. Is there anywhere where it kind of doesn't actually fit, like where it's not a great fit in a farm system?
Yeah, so it does come with There's some inputs that are just hard to dissolve, and some things, if you do need to get into the soil at a high rate, like sometimes your P or your K, it can be more efficient to just get a bulky in and put that on if there's a big amendment that needs to happen quickly. And the other point would be maybe it's not so much it comes down to the farmer. Like if there's someone that isn't interested in looking into their soil biology and learning a little bit and doing herbage tests and soil tests and kind of making those nice small incremental tweaks over time to end up with a really good result. Sometimes it's, if you see it on farm, it's already stressful enough. They've got a lot going on, and it is easier just to ring a contractor. So I'd say, yeah, there's sometimes where you would, even sometimes for owners might just still call a bulky if they're doing silage or something and they just need a big dumping of potassium. Or yeah, it's definitely no silver bullet. We do also have hundreds of farmers that only use the Tow Fert for all the inputs. Yeah, it just comes down to the farmer, really.
Mm-hmm. And do you see that when they go from, say, maybe they start at the nitrogen and looking for that efficiency there, and then they move to more the biologicals, is that kind of like a mindset shift from feeding just the plant to actually feeding the soil?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, the first thing that we hear, like when we're on farm and do our testimonial videos and things like that, often it's the reduction of N that has a flow-on effect to other things, and it's a really hard thing to quantify, and I'm quite cautious about, I don't want to claim that this is why, because it's not, we don't have it documented or anything, it's all anecdotal really. But when you remove all that nitrogen out of the cow as well, it has a flow-on effect to, subclinical call-outs. And yeah, a lot of the testimonials that we've got, the farmers will say that they'll have lower milk urea, less veterinary call-outs, and kind of better calving rates and things like that, less fatalities. It's not so much that it's foliar doing that, it's just they're just managing inputs and the nutrient in the plant a bit better. So technically you could do that under a granular system too. It's just with foliar it's a bit easier because you don't have to apply as much to get similar results, and you can on the fly add trace elements here and there. So, you can get your zinc, your boron, your selenium, your moly on all in one pass without needing to go put a bulky out for this, a sprayer out for that, and you don't have to dust this on. And so I think that puts people down that path of looking at what they can do with less, just because they see the benefits flow through on the whole farm, and then working with the biology side of it and going down the more biological route. It seems that the more they adopt biological inputs, it helps them reduce a little bit more. So maybe a farmer might get down 30 to 40% of urea and just by switching to a foliar application. But then if they start using things like humic acid or fulvic acid and chelating agents and some biology support, they can kind of push another 10 or 20% of that because they're leaning more on the biology side to do that heavy lifting.
And are they doing that, over a number of seasons, not going full hog and ripping it out? I'm sure there's always people that will rip it right out. But
there's plenty of people that will go full hog, but yeah, I guess the safer way is to ease into it. Often it's easier just to go switch to what you're already doing, but in a foliar form, and then even trial paddock by paddock or a certain percentage of your farm. I'd say it really is up to the farmer. There's obviously inputs that they're not going to harm anything, so there's no harm in going putting fish out on the whole farm probably. But then if you're going to come up with some really out there brew with 10 things in it and you don't really know what you're doing, or if you haven't got an agronomist there to steer you, it's kind of hard to know what actually has the effect. If you're going to just go full hog, you might be making 10 different input changes at once, and how do you know what one of those is actually giving you the new results you're seeing? So having that baseline and doing small tweaks is probably where I see the most comfort and sustained growth. Yeah, and just testing, like soil and herbage testing. Otherwise, you just don't know what you're changing, and you don't know why. Farmers are generally curious people, so that they're keen to try things, but unless they test and kind of record it, it's hard to know what they're trying, if it's working, or what to tweak when they see certain feedback in their results.
It's a very important thing to note is testing, but also if you're doing a trial across the whole farm, to leave at least one area even if it's small to compare against. I know that there's a few guys that I've dealt with that have done certain fertiliser mixes, and then they now regret it because it's been 2 or 3 years and they can't really tell if it's made much of a difference or not. And I'm like, I should have left a bit. Now I know I won't do it next time. So it's the classic. You always regret it and take photos as well. Is also a good one. Are you seeing those guys that are pulling it out and they're talking about better animal health and obviously lower milk ureas, and obviously we're talking more about pasture here. Are you seeing like a change in the quality of that because they are doing obviously the testing as well to check that?
The quality of the pasture or the milk solids? Or
well, both actually, because obviously if the quality of the pasture improves, it probably flows through to the milk as well.
Like I haven't seen any like numbers on that. We haven't got any trials or aren't aware of any trials. We have seen like there is the I guess the yield or the numbers gained. So like the using less N, getting the same dry matter and yield, milk solid production and things like that. But like the Welsh government did one. They're all independent trials, and that showed it. I can send you the links after this if you did want to put them in the description. But as far as the animal health and quality goes, it's mostly anecdotal. Like it's things farmers report to us. Yeah, it's like we hear. It might sound crazy, but people just say the cows are more relaxed, or they've got a better shine to them. A big one is, and this isn't like you might not get this just going from granular urea to foliar urea. You really do have to look at your herbage tests and work with people like yourself, with people like Conan at Agronomics, and get the right nutrient density into your plants and animals. But from doing that, the flow-on effect we see is less call-outs, less veterinary call-outs, less bags used, and antibiotics and things like that. But I'd be cautious to claim it's purely a foliar thing. It just makes it easier with a tool that can do that and can allow a farmer the flexibility to put in what he wants, when he wants, and really optimise for all those trace elements and animal health supplements. Like a really big one a lot of people don't think about is dusting, like your mag oxide and lime and things like that. With a Tow Fert, you can actually just put that all into a slurry and spray it on evenly, so you don't get half it blowing away and you don't get the striping on the plant on your pasture. You just get total even coverage. So the cows actually they're all taking up, as long as they're all eating, they're all getting the same amount basically. And you can do it 5 days in advance. If you put a bit of molasses in, stick it down, it doesn't have to be a horrible job like dusting normally is. That's actually something on the animal health side that we hear a lot is people love getting away from the dusting. Yeah,
I bet. And you always kind of see the cows will almost eat around the dusted. So it's like, how much are they really getting? Whereas if you do it this way and it's evenly spread, bit of molasses, they're probably going to rip in and clean that up pretty quickly.
Yeah, 100%.
And like you say, get them more even across the whole herd, which is what you're looking for when you're using anything in your system, if you're paying for it.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest costs you're seeing saved are around reduced nitrogen use or reduced input costs. Is there anything around fewer passes? Are people doing less like actual rounds of fertiliser as well on top of that?
So under with nitrogen anyway, foliar nitrogen, the plant can only really take up 10 to 20 units of N. So once if you're putting on 40 kilos, that's kind of the max it's going to take up in that one sitting, 40 kilos of urea that is. So you can actually get really good results by doing a less, more often approach where you might go out 8 times, instead of just doing four applications over the year or something. You might go 8 times, but with less fert, and still less overall, but you're just feeding it what it needs and when it needs it, and it allows you to do more applications of trace elements or make faster tweaks to your herbage sample results you get. And you get it's a faster feedback loop as well, right? Like if you're going to go do an application and then you get a herbage test, that next time you go out, you can just add a little bit of this. You might want to put in a little bit of boron, or you might need some more calcium. You don't have to do it all in one hit across the whole farm. Yeah, I wouldn't say that people apply less passes. Definitely in a more regenerative sense, those farmers would. But a conventional farmer would actually probably increase his passes of, say, nitrogen, but at a much lesser rate, and be covering other applications within that too. So as a net, they would probably save passes over the paddock because they'd be putting on their lime, their seeds, trace elements, even thistle sprays at the same time as their urea. So yeah, as a whole, I'd say it's less passes, but if you're just talking urea, it's probably more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've talked probably quite a lot about the dairy guys. Are you seeing interest in the sheep and beef space as well for utilising foliars now?
Yeah, so definitely a big uptake in the last couple of years of sheep and beef. I mean, in Aussie, for a while there, we're probably like, I think last year maybe 80% of the machines went to sheep and, or 70 or 80% went to sheep and beef farms. So I guess it comes down there on any pastoral farm, really. The biggest asset is your pasture, right? You get that right, you get the rest of it right. So if you can grow more grass, you can generally grow more beef as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And utilise that grass well and they'll clean it up, then you're going to finish beef pretty well.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that people are using, beyond nitrogen through the system?
Yeah, so I guess one that's probably not too familiar with people would be the chelating agents, like adding your humic acids or fulvic acids, and then a carbon source, so whether it's like molasses or humates, biochar, even just like table sugar, just feeding the biology at the same time. So if we're asking for the microbes to cycle all this nutrients and turn our inputs into grass growth, giving them some food to do it, some energy to do it with. And then a lot of people are starting to look at balancing that bacteria to fungi relationship and whether or not they're putting, it might be, your seaweed extracts or fish hydrolysates for that, and anything like compost extracts, compost teas. Yeah, it really depends on if, I guess a lot of people are doing that soil food web test now, and they'll see whether or not they need a more fungal dominant soil or if they're bacteria dominant, and then they try and balance it out. So it really differs farm to farm, but yeah, most people we see where they're going down biological route, they'll be looking at some kind of fish input or biochar or humates. Those are the most common, and they're the ones. Seeds, it's an easy win, the oversowing seeds at the same time as fertilising. So we can put any small, hard, round seed really through the Tow Fert. I actually put up a post on our Facebook page, I don't know if you saw that, but a farmer in Trevor Stammers in Victoria, Australia, he put about 16.5 kilo to the hectare of chicory out and just did a whole chicory crop just with the Tow Fert.
Yeah.
And it's on its third grazing now, and it's looking great. But being able to put your clover, chicory, plantain, rape, turnip, things like that out at the same time, just to stay on top of, pasture diversity and just getting that a bit of variety in the sward as well for your animals is quite something we're seeing a lot of people interested in. That's quite that'd be a big difference to what people might be used to with their current application systems, is being able to do the seeds and the fine particles. Yeah.
When they're doing those seeds, are they going out with, say, like a mineral blend, like their normal fert, or are they doing them separately?
Some might do just, 4 kgs, 5 kgs of clover every round with their fert, and then some might do specific oversowing rounds where they'll just put maybe some lime in, some lime flower and seeds, or just the seeds themselves. Like that pasture that was oversown in chicory. It wasn't pasture. He ripped his paddock. He didn't spray it out. He just ripped it, ran a ripper through, rotary hoed it, applied the seeds, only the seeds with water, soaked them in the Tow Fert for 4 hours beforehand and sprayed them out, and then put a roller over it after that. But then on the other hand, we have farmers that they'll just chuck a bag of, it might be just clover or clover, chicory, plantain is quite a common mix people use, and they'll just put that out at 5 to 10 kilos, in a mix, and just for a maintenance really. It doesn't replace drilling, but you can, I guess, replace drilling if you do it as its own application.
That's interesting. Does water quality impact the system as well when you're putting these things out? Yeah.
So this is an interesting one for me because, one, I don't 100% know this answer in a practical term, but we asked Joel Williams the same when we had a webinar with him, and he said yes. He said that the better water you can use, the better. So, which is interesting, and it does make sense. I guess the more pure form of anything's good. But when it comes to practicality on farms, sometimes it's easier. Some farmers will suck straight into the Tow Fert from the effluent pond, and they'll mix their urea. They'll put everything on with that water. And I can't say I've seen a big difference we haven't noticed the difference in water quality as far as uptake and results go. Not to say there isn't one, but I think if you were going really far down the optimization route, you probably would want to use clean water and have a pretty balanced pH. But then I guess it depends on what you're putting in it too, right? Like as soon as you start adding a couple of inputs, the acidity of that blend changes. So we've had some agronomists that work with our customers that have prioritized that order of what you put things in and the rate with the mix acidity in mind, and then others say it doesn't really matter, so I'm not really sure where that one sits. Sorry there, Conan.
Oh, I can't answer that one either. I'd have to do some research on that. That'll be one for Joel Williams.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know people just use effluent as well. It could be one of those things where, you get hard water or water that's got quite high salt content might be the difference. So the purer water you can use, the better.
Yeah.
But I guess it's all entirely down to the context and the farm and everything as well.
Yep.
Is there, I guess you just kind of mentioned it, is there any combinations that don't really work that well together in Tow Fert?
Yeah, some people, they put like 12 different inputs in at once, and sometimes you can be not that far off making a bomb. So there are some combinations that, so like urea and water is endothermic, so it gets really cold, but there are exothermic reactions too that get hot. Those ones you probably want to avoid, but I'm not confident enough to say what ones. I think ammonium nitrate and lime maybe is a bad one, but yeah, we try not to recommend around the mixes and stuff like that. I think that's something we'd definitely want to steer towards an agronomist for. There are products that like gum up, so like I know that copper sulfate and fulvic acid with urea is very corrosive. Like urea itself is pretty corrosive, but you add those two, and if you don't wash it out, you can rust stainless with it. So if you're using certain inputs, you do want to wash things out nicely. There's probably not too much really on like a dairy farm that would stitch you up, I don't think.
Yeah. What's in your point of view like the most underrated input that people use?
Underrated. It's got to be either the fulvic acid or a carbon source, I think. For the price, it seems like a cheap win. You're kind of just pushing that efficiency a bit more. When the input you're putting in is already really expensive, you might as well try and get more out of it, right?
100%.
Yeah. And then sometimes the most underrated input is not using an input too, like you're using less of an input. Yeah, there's quite a few inputs out there that might say a certain application rate on the tin, and we see people using, like a quarter of that and still seeing results. So I wouldn't be afraid to just trial on some paddocks using less and seeing what happens. But yeah, I'd say the carbon source thing's quite a big one.
No, it's definitely a key one, especially when people want to get better efficiency out of their fertiliser. Like a carbon source is a no-brainer, but it's just not widely understood how it works and why. And I don't get it, because surely the people selling fertiliser would sell just as much, but it's sold with a carbon source so they get better results for their products. So it's a head scratcher for me, why it's not promoted more.
It is a tricky one with being able to just say what works or what doesn't, and it's just there's so many variables, and then I guess the science and confidence to back it up often has to go through like some big university trial that's probably also funded by people selling other products. So it is a long route to clarity, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. For those farmers who are getting, great results versus those who might be not, is there any kind of key difference when it comes to using either foliar or Tow Fert?
I'd say testing. Like if you don't know what's going on, you can't change anything. Yeah. So you need a baseline, and if you try something, you need to note what changes after you've done it. There's so many times where we've introduced, so like maybe a farmer gets a Tow Fert, he starts using it, and he's like, I didn't quite see the results that I thought I would. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, do you want to send us a soil test? And he might say, oh, I haven't got one. You're like, oh, okay, that's a good start. Let's do that. And then we might I won't mention the farmer. He's a really good dude, but we had a call with Conan who at Agronomics, and it ended up being something like I think it was calcium. It was just lime. That's all he needed, and it like turned his whole system around. And without seeing both the soil test and the herbage test to see, I guess, what was in the soil but what wasn't in the plant and things like that, he just wouldn't know that. And so I'd say getting soil tests and just asking for advice from not anyone, just people that you know have done it or that have experience in it. Yeah, that's a big one, because it is a lot different. The options are a lot different. How you'd address certain deficiencies might be a lot different than you'd see in a granular input system. So yeah, if you are going down the foliar route and something's not quite working how you want, I'd say get your soil and herbage test and just talk to someone that's done it before, someone you know has experience in foliar application.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that Conan is really good at and getting across, is reading across all those tests and giving you the right information. So if someone was starting to think about, trialing a different approach or going down the foliar, is there anything you'd recommend them as kind of their first starting point?
Yeah, so I wouldn't change too much at once, but whether or not you go down the route of buying one of our machines or not, it'll definitely make your life easier. But you can test the same theory by jerry-rigging up one of your old sprayers and dissolving your own urea in a tank and applying it just to see if you're going to get that response. And you'll probably block that and get frustrated with it and then ring us up. But that's, as long as you give it a go and just see if it works for you. We also do, free demos and things like that. So if it is something that any of your audience are seriously considering, we're happy to come on farm and just put whatever inputs they have through it and show them how it works, because it is quite daunting. Like, I know a lot of the alternative inputs or even foliar setups people have, they might have a big mixing tank, other trash pumps running that constantly to dissolve it, and then they feed it into their boom sprayer and they go out and use that. And then you run into things like they don't have the nozzles designed for it, so they're blocking nozzles, and the pump's not designed for it, so it's breaking or rusting out. And it's a lot of wear components when you're using, especially the fine particles and certain trace elements that can be pretty abrasive. So I'd say don't get put off by the practicality of it. There are machines out there like ours that do make it a really practical everyday use item. But if you're going to go down that route and try foliar, feel free to test it on whatever machine you've got, really. It's
bloody good advice, and I think I would be taking up that if I was thinking about it, taking up a wee free trial to see how it goes. So to finish up, I ask all my guests this one question, which is, what's one belief or principle that keeps you grounded no matter what season you're in?
I think as long as if we stay curious and chase incremental improvements, not the next big gold mine or, silver bullet, I think incremental improvements over a long time will beat large step changes any day of the week. Yeah. So we come from an engineering background, and we're always thinking, these machines, they're pretty similar to when they started, but pretty much everything's changed now. But we have never had one big step change to make that happen. So we're constantly just taking feedback from farmers and improving the machines to suit the use case better. And I think that application would work on farm perfectly. You can make small tweaks and incremental changes on your farm based on soil tests and herbage tests, and after a year or two you come away with actually quite a net gain if you do little tweaks over 2% here, 5% there, adds up to a lot.
It certainly does. It's good advice, and it's good advice for life as well. So where can the listeners connect with you and learn more about the Tow Fert?
The easiest one is probably towandfert.com or on Facebook. So we've got Facebook. We've got everyone listening is also welcome to join our Facebook group. It's the Tow Fert Growth Network. It's for farmers or anyone, industry professionals that are interested in fine particle or foliar application. Yeah, come along and don't be afraid to reach out. We do free demos on farm, and if you just Google Tow Fert, you're bound to find us.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for coming on today, Joel, and having a chat. Wanted to have this one for quite some time, so it's awesome to get my questions answered and talk more about how the Tow Fert system and foliar can work in a farm system.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, Conan. We've been listening to your podcast for a while now, so it's great to be on it, and look forward to meeting up with you at the next community event, wherever that may be.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be in one in the next month or two. I'll see you.
Sounds good, man.